we're recording. So good evening. I'm Judy Stewart, and I am with the Business Career Center at the Stanford campus. My colleague, Mick, I can't pronounce his last name after working with him for 3 years, is at the Stores campus, and Kathy Hendrickson is with us from the Stores campus as well. So this is part of Business Career Week, and we are joined by the UConn Healthcare Management Club, and that's Richmond Lee, and all of your members can wave if they if they want to, if they're on the screen. But thank you very much. We are co-hosting with a club who recommended, who advised us on what they wanted us to cover in the Career Center. So thank you very much for your interaction. And we will also be joined by 3 alumni about halfway into this. And today we are going to be talking about simple strategies for your job search success. And basically, and what our alumni are going to share and Mick's going to talk about is that when you're in college, you know, you get your resume and your LinkedIn profile, and you learn how to navigate, set up a profile on Handshake, but then what do you actually do to mobilize it and to make it all into a success? What do you do with your network? Why are you forming a network? So that's really the engine that moves your career search, is learning these simple tricks, tips. Maybe they're tricks, I don't know, but we'll see what the alumni tell us. Anyway, so at this point, I just want to turn it over to Mick, and Mick's just going to go through a couple of slides just to kind of talk through some actions that you can take. And then after that, we're going to have the 3 alumni join us on a panel, a virtual panel, asking a couple of questions and hearing what they have to say. So Mick, would you like to take it from here?
Absolutely. Thank you, Judy, and a great introduction. And it's great to have the panel with us today. Again, Angela and Emma, we greatly appreciate you guys stopping by and giving us some insight about your successes and things that you've guys done along your journey to find the great places that you work for today, but also sort of that experience that you had here at UConn that made your transition from academics to work life a great success. So let me go ahead and just share my screen before we jump to the panel discussion, and give you a little brief overview of PowerPoint on maybe that application process for a lot of juniors or seniors here today that are thinking about going through that internship process, or again, full-time job. I'm just going to go ahead and start the PowerPoint. And maybe you're applied for a role already, and you're waiting, and you want to know when's that recruiter going to contact me in regards to an opportunity that you applied for. And some of the key factors to that success, to landing in an interview, to finding yourself at that job, you have to be proactive. You have to remember that you have to sort of stay in the game and always be a go-getter. Have that mentality of being forward-facing, and in order to know your outcomes along the way, you really have to manage your outcomes. And it's part of professionalism in the things that you do academically, but also in work. To be professional in finding success, you have to be able to manage those outcomes along the way. So I always tell everyone you're only as successful in the job search based by the efforts that you really put in, and you have to be present. You need to be prepared, and that includes having that sort of self accountability along the way. And in order to meet your expectations and exceed those expectations, you have to set goals along the way, but keeping track record of that. And I know we're always busy. We probably have a lot of different irons in the fire and activities related to your academics in school, or whether in clubs that you're part of. But it's still important along the way. Think of things that you learn from your FYE course or BCLC course when we're talking about time management, and that's perfectly related to job search strategies. in organizing your time effectively and then maintaining a record of what you're doing along the way. And that's so key. So part of the agenda today, as far as the PowerPoint goes here, we'll talk a little bit about ways to stay organized, how to effectively communicate with all stakeholders that are involved in the process, things that you can do along the way to be successful. We'll talk a little bit more about communication. We'll go a little bit more in depth there. Things that actually work when communicating with hiring managers, recruiters, and HR, um, and things that maybe don't work as well along the way too. That might make you more frustrated when we're talking about spinning wheels and trying to know if I'm getting the best ROI when I'm applying for a job and I'm using different methods along the way. Many times, seniors will come into our office and ask, Mick, I've applied to X amount of jobs and I'm not getting the results. I'm not getting the hits that I'm looking for. What am I doing wrong? Um, or what am I not doing well or effective is sometimes the clues that we have to look at. The other thing we'll definitely talk about is follow up, and that goes back to being proactive, professionalism along the way in all of your successes, whether it's in academics. I'm sure if you had questions related to your courses, if you're or a project you're working on, you're probably still involved with all the key stakeholders rather, organizing meeting time, etc. So you have to do that as well with hiring managers and recruiters in HR and being proactive and taking all the necessary steps and doing follow up. Next slide here. I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a graphic to sort of see firsthand where are results actually happening and how effective they are. And this graphic just does a really great job in identifying, what my ROI is when I actually apply for a role. When we're talking about job boards, third-party job search engine websites, you guys probably have heard of them from Monster, Career Builder, Indeed. Simply Hired, the list goes on. That's a third party job board. And if we're looking at applications, when you're sending out your resume, out of 800 applications reviewed, you're only going to get potentially one hit. I'm not saying you're not maybe going to get more, but on average, that's the general thought with job boards. Your ROI isn't as high there, so you're going to have that effect of spinning your wheels and wondering why am I not getting the results, versus applying now directly to company websites. If you apply to 100 different roles, now you're going to get one hire. And then even further, which is the category we really want you guys to focus on, is the networking piece. It's the personal referrals. 1 out of 10. What a tremendous way of increasing your not only your outcomes, but your interpersonal communication skills, building your network effectively. And that's also going to translate and actually transfer over into the interview process when you're seeking an opportunity, because you're building rapport, you're strengthening your interpersonal communication skills, and it's going to give you more success. So ultimately, we want to build network as much as we can, because that's going to give us better ROI. And I always tell the story about, if John Smith worked at a company and he made a referral to a up and coming grad at the University of Connecticut to his boss, and John Smith has been with the company for 20 years, and that manager knows that person's work ethic. They built a rapport relation with that person over the course of the years rather. That's going to go a much further distance than someone trying to apply through a third party search engine site like Monster or Career Builder. So value is in building key relations, and really investing in those relationships along the way to get you better results. I also wanted to add in this small graphic here, and this is from Glassdoor. Out of even applications that you apply to, if there's 250 openings as well for corporate jobs, all right, that's a lot of resumes. Out of those applicants of 250, 4 to 6 will be interviewed, and only one will get the offer. So I want you just to see also that volume of how many applicants are competing in the job market. This also will depend on, if is it employer's market or is it an employee's market? That also will fluctuate with the economy. But you want to be aware that where the ROI goes by making that referral and building that network. Now, John Smith could take your resume and provide it to the hiring manager, to the recruiter, and that tremendously goes a long distance. So I want you to be aware of that, where we want to focus in on building our investment, putting those eggs in that basket is going to be in the network. You have to stay organized in this process to be successful. I can't stress that enough. So when you folks do end attending these events, I think it's perfectly fine to ask for the hiring managers or recruiters or alum their contact information. The same thing goes at a university career fair, at a career Tuesday. Following up with the hiring managers shows tremendous amount of interest in the roles. But you also along the way want to stay organized and focused. And that's part of the professionalism. So incorporating tools, things like Microsoft Excel along the way to manage your job search. And I'll actually show you a little bit of an example, a sample of what that should look like. That's a tracker, if you will, something that I use for my job searching. I always have encouraged others to use that. My colleagues also have, I'm sure use that as well, right? And it just keeps you focused along that path when seeking out opportunities. Um, and then along the way, if you apply to multiple put in perspective, if you apply to multiple roles with one company and the HR manager calls you and says, hey, just checking in with you, you've applied for a role with us 3 days ago, March 3rd for for an opportunity, and you're thinking to yourself, which job was it on March 3rd that I applied to? Well, now you actually have a document, an Excel sheet that you can look back at to track that role, to see which job opportunity it was as well that you applied for. So, and then along the way, you're going to be able to know what have you done as far as follow up, as far as network and engagement. So those are key things to be aware of. LinkedIn, find out the preferred methods of contacting the employer. Obviously, if you do network with someone at a fair, career fair, maybe they'll hand you that business card. Maybe they'll tell you to connect with them via LinkedIn. And, reach out to that person after these events to show that interest. The same thing goes with your personal networks as well. As you build and foster those, reach out to those networks via email as well as LinkedIn, and check-ins are good. And I always say, build quality networks. I rather see a student with 50 contacts in their LinkedIn rather than 1,000 contacts in their LinkedIn, because I want you to have quality of a network as well. And checking in means seeing how they're doing. Uh, you know, uh, Exploring the option about learning more about the company, their culture. Building that rapport and network is crucial, more than just clicking a button and requesting someone to be within your network. And that's truly important as well. Avoid using Google Docs with employers. I want you to be cognizant of, when sharing documents, always follow sort of the instructions, what the employer is asking for. If it's a doc file or a PDF file, making sure that the format is grammatically correct, having someone from the career office review your documents, using the writing center at the university, as well as incorporating things like grammarly.com. There's a free version of resource just to check your grammar and spelling, and it's always good to proofread as much as you can. So regardless if it's an email, a resume, an essay that you're working on, proofread is so crucial, and it's critical because there's a saying in industry: a first impression is a lasting impression, and it truly is. And that impression starts from your resume to communication exchange as well as in person. um, let's see. You definitely want to, keep things short and simple. I want you to know HR managers are and hiring managers are all also overworked. They have maybe 400 plus resumes they're reviewing, tons of jobs. meetings constantly. So you definitely don't want to write a thesis to a lot of these folks. You definitely want to build rapport, but find out the best method of communication with them. And sometimes it might be the traditional phone call. Folks might be traveling. So I always say, build that rapport, that relationship, so you know what the best method of contact is. Um, and you definitely want to express enthusiasm. That's been a great theme that we've learned over the course of these past few days, Judy. I have to say, with a lot of our employers, is show interest in the opportunities that you're actually applying for. There's ways to build that during the job search process, especially at a university fair. We definitely emphasize to tell students maybe attend that fair and first go and practice that engagement piece of building rapport with companies that you might be less interested in, uh, to develop and further that skill of networking and building rapport. So when by the time you actually get to an organization that you are interested in, you're going to have the confidence that's going to come across very well during the networking piece with the hiring manager, and you're going to the confidence is going to show. And a lot of times employers say, informed us that reaction of knowing, hey, that this is a potential person we want to bring in is a gut reaction. It's based off of that enthusiasm, that initial engagement that they had with the student that came to that career fair. So that's something to think about as well. Strategize during your networking and job search process, and again, engage with companies maybe you're less interested in to build that rapport and confidence within the networking process. um, Let's see. I want you to know too, when you are following up with these hiring managers during opportunities, if you don't hear back, don't stress. It's perfectly fine. Again, they are, as I said, busy. But if you do establish a network and connection, and maybe a date elapses, it's perfectly fine at that point to definitely follow up with the hiring manager. I always say you don't want to be a pest, but you definitely want to still show interest. So thinking about the best method of contact, if it's by phone or email, by LinkedIn, definitely reach out to still express your interests. You could reiterate your qualifications as well as a further time to discuss those qualifications, whether it's in person or by phone. To set up a time to chat is is always very professional. At the same time, it tells the employer that you're very interested in an opportunity with the organization. So you shouldn't wait, definitely don't wait. I always say a rule of thumb, especially for roles that you do apply to, you have to be patient. But a rule of thumb is always, 2 weeks, I think is fairly acceptable. If you do have an interview, conducting a follow-up by sending a thank you note as well is crucial, within a 24-hour time frame. So those are common practices that are good to do along the process. And you want to track that as well, managing that job search effort using an Excel sheet, for instance, or maybe in a notebook, whatever works best for you. But it's an important part of the professionalism and keeping yourself organized along the way to be successful. And that's the whole point of keep that momentum going. Even though maybe you checked in with that employer, keep those irons hot in the fire and continue to do the search is going to be crucial. I can't tell you how many times we've engaged with students where someone says, I applied to 12 or 14 roles and I didn't get a call back yet. What am I doing wrong? What's going on? Well, you haven't applied yet enough. You haven't exposed yourself to the market to find out what opportunities are still a potential for you. So that's very crucial. I just also want to just show you a quick snapshot of what an example of a job search Excel sheet would look like. Now, this is from an organization that I do actually that we all do follow. It's known as the Muse, and they had a fairly good sort of template, an Excel sheet to organize yourself along the process of managing your search efforts. So if general information, identifying the company that you're applying with, the job posting itself, when did you find that role? Did you apply to that role? The date that you applied to that role? Did you do your research about the opportunity and the organization? Did you send a follow-up email to maybe the hiring manager? the date that you sent that. Did you interview with anyone regarding that role? Who were the interview, the panel, for instance, if you interviewed with? And tracking that along the way is going to be important. And I would also encourage you to have multiple tabs when you're managing your job search. So one for Handshake, one for LinkedIn, one for Career Tuesdays or university fairs, um, direct employer websites. These are all different methods, right, and different resources to use along your search. But you always want to also keep in the back of your mind which ones are going to give me the best ROI. And that's also being active in the sense of building your network and rapport. So having also a tab for networking is going to be very important. Um, and if you do that right, students also ask me, well, Mick, which method is the best? They're all great methods. Certain ones will give you better ROI than others, but it's important that you manage them along the job search cycle. So without further, I definitely want to hand over to Judy. I know I'm running over. Please, Judy, go ahead.
Oh, no, I just had a question. If there is an example of that spreadsheet, Mick, would you be
Yes,
able to put it into the chat bar?
absolutely. Yeah, let me go
Okay,
ahead and do that.
so that was so helpful. I just thought it would be nice if you could put it into the chat
Of
bar for
course.
us.
Absolutely.
So
And without
anyway,
further ado, Judy, I'm going to pass the baton back to you. Thank you so much.
okay, great. So thank you for that. Great, great tips. Now, before we start the panel, I do want to answer a question that was asked by uh, Doigu, and I'm sure that I messed up the pronunciation of your name. They ask, if we apply to a position and don't have a connection within that company, would it be appropriate to reach out to an employee from that department on LinkedIn? And how should we tailor the message? So, yes, that's a possibility, but I want to give you another thought on that. Before you reach out to somebody that you don't know, when you go into LinkedIn and you are looking at the company page, there's a tab called People. And then when you go to the People tab, it will allow you to filter the people in that tab. So you can actually put in University of Connecticut or University of Connecticut School of Business. And then anybody that works for that company who was a UConn alum will come up. So if you do it that way, then at least you're connecting with a UConn alum who hopefully feels good about making a connection for you. And there's something else, what Mick was saying about don't be afraid to reach out. Many, many companies have something called an employee referral program. And in the employee referral program, if they refer you and you are hired, they get a cash bonus. So they are happy to do that because you're a UConn alum, graduate, but also they're happy to do it because there's something in that for them. And some of the bigger companies, and we have some alum with us from some of the bigger companies, are really some of those employee referral bonuses can be 500 or 1,000 or $2,000. So they're not just, a Grubhub gift certificate. They're really something, which I have no problem with Grubhub, but they're really something nice. So anyway, yes, oh, did you have a question or are you waving to somebody? Maybe waving to somebody. Anyway, what I'm going to do is this is the first time we're doing a virtual panel. So I want to welcome Emma Burns and Angela. And I'm going to ask them to start out by introducing themselves and telling, we're going to ask a question, but also cover the year that you graduated and what your major is. So I'm going to start with Angela. And Angela, can you give us a quick overview of what your college to career background was like briefly. And as I said, your major, your year of graduations, if you had internships, and what your full-time job is. So
Sure.
would you like to start?
Yeah, great. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Judy, and thanks, everyone, for having me tonight. Angela DiFilippo. I'm a 2018 graduate of the School of Business. I was a healthcare management major, so nice to have the Healthcare Management Society here tonight, too. Um, while I was at UConn, I worked with Mick and Kathy a little bit. I was in the School of Business career advising office, but also did some career stuff. So I was a peer advisor on the academic side and a TA for the career development and business course. So working with students and talking about this is something I've been interested in for several years and continue to do post grad. But during my time at UConn, I had a few different internships. As a healthcare management major, I thought I really wanted to be more on the hospital side. So did an internship at Natchog Hospital, a very small hospital down the street from UConn stores. Decided that was really not what I wanted to do. Tried something different, went to Aetna, was in the office of the chairman and CEO, did an internship there, learning about really how a corporation runs. And left that summer feeling like I know what this company does, but I still have more time. So went to Mercer and got an internship there doing health and benefits consulting, where I stayed with Mercer for 2 summers. So we'll talk about this more, I think, in the next question or so, but learned a lot about, what I could do in employee benefits consulting. And like I mentioned, did that for 2 summers and then ultimately got my full-time job with Mercer. So I was there for about a year and a half after college. And then I'm in my current role now at a company called Consortium Health Plans, where I do consulting for Blue Cross Blue Shield health plans, really focused on healthcare strategy and innovation and what different digital health startups are doing and how they can enhance health plans. So have done a few different things in healthcare, but happy to talk more about that. But great to meet you all.
Excellent, thank you. And Emma, can you answer the same question? A little overview, what your major was and what your career journey looked like at the beginning.
Yes, absolutely. And same as Angela, thank you all for having me tonight. Very excited to be here and see some familiar faces. I also used to work at the UConn Business Career Development Center with the lovely Kathy, Mick, and Judy. So I got a lot of experience doing some marketing for the office, as well as working with students on resume and interview prep. So that was great, and it's great to be back here again tonight. So in college, that was my job while I was at school, but then I also did have an internship between my junior and senior year at the TJX companies in Framingham, Massachusetts. That was a great internship, definitely recommend to all. I was a merchandising and allocation analyst, and I got to live in Boston for the summer, which was great. And then I came back my senior year, also decided that I didn't really necessarily want to go into the merchandising and fashion role as much as I thought I initially wanted to. And so I decided to look for something else during my senior year. And then I ended up getting a role at Nielsen, which is now Nielsen IQ, to start the summer after graduating. Sorry, I forgot to mention I was a marketing major and I graduated in 2019. So after about 2 years at Nielsen IQ, I went to go and my current role, which I've been at for just around 5 months now, as associate brand manager at Unilever. And the brand I'm currently working on is actually Hellmann's Mayonnaise, which is really fun, surprisingly. It doesn't sound as glamorous as you think it is, but I'm really enjoying myself and learning a lot about brand strategy and marketing overall. So it's great.
Terrific. So I'm going to go back to Angela now. So Angela, as you think about your beginning jobs and internships, tell us some advice about how you got your internship or a part-time job, how you networked, anything that you wish you knew then as you embarked on that you know now.
Yeah. So I think maybe I'll start with the Aetna internship, because I think that one for me kind of required the most amount on my part. So Mick talked a lot about like showing interest and being proactive. And I think when I was applying for the Aetna internship, this was something, I was actually a freshman. So it was pretty ambitious, and I didn't know that this was even possible. But there was Connecticut Insurance and Financial Services does like an internship and job fair, at least they used to, in Hartford, and Aetna was there and a few other health insurance companies. And I said, I'm just going to go and see like what I can learn. So I did this over like the winter break, and I met a recruiter from Aetna, and I just said, I'm a freshman, I'm studying healthcare management, really interested in some of these roles that you have. Like, is this even a possibility? And she said to me, oh yeah. She's like, we've hired people like at your age before, or we even had like high school people come in and do like different shadowing opportunities. So yeah, that's great. She took my resume. But I think with the key piece that was so important to getting that initial conversation going was I said, I have an internship coming up that's for academic credit, so I'll have some healthcare experience. And that was the first one I did at Nat Chalk Hospital. So I had something to kind of go off of. Because at that point, had not taken any healthcare classes, really didn't know like what I was getting into at UConn. So from that conversation, it led to a phone interview, and that went well. But then things went silent. So I was following up with the recruiter, didn't hear much. But then I saw UConn was having the career expo or internship expo, something like that. Attended that in person, met a different recruiter and said, hey, I spoke to so-and-so a few weeks ago. This is how it went. Any updates? I'm still interested in this opportunity. So continuing to show my interest there. The next day I got a call from the recruiter. So, that follow-up was really important. And that led to another opportunity, and they said, okay, we'll have you do a next interview. And the BCLC was actually planning a trip to go to Aetna on site. So I said, hey, I'm going to be there on this day. Can I actually like meet the team at that point for my interview? So I think, looking for those different opportunities that I knew I had coming up and seeing where else are they going to be in a way that I can engage with them, because email wasn't working at that point. And this was, like 7 years ago. So before everyone was working remotely and inundated with emails. So I think like I share that example because at the time I had no clue what I was getting into. This was the first time I had ever done it. And I just learned like I needed to continue to follow up. So then, once I got that internship, and then once that summer came to an end and I started looking again, I kind of knew what to expect. I knew what worked, what didn't work. But just constantly putting myself out there and saying, I know this is a big risk, but the worst they say is no. And then, I look for something else. So continuing to follow up, I think, is the one thing that I wasn't sure, at the time, can I do this? But it ended up working out.
That's so great. Yeah. And when you were talking about all of your jobs, I was thinking, oh my God, she must have started as a freshman, because you went through like 4 jobs before you actually graduated. So good for you. And as I put in the chat bar, you've got nothing to lose. Just go for it. As she said, she went to that career fair the first time she was a freshman. And as Kathy said, the worst they can say is no. But it also gives you good practice. So it's always a good idea to put yourself out there and then relentlessly follow up like you did. So good for you. Emma, tell us a little bit about how you got your internship, which I guess was at TJ Maxx at the beginning. TJ Corporation. I probably got that right. Wrong.
All good. TJX Corporation. So it's it's TJ Maxx, Home Goods, Marshalls, the collective of those companies. And yeah, so I didn't get my first like official internship until my junior to senior year of college. So not quite as many as Angela, who was definitely a little more on top of it than I probably was in my earlier years. So definitely don't be worried if you haven't had more official experience or more, like official type of internships. Any kind of work experience is great experience to speak to and valuable. And that's what I really discovered when I started going into the different career fairs that UConn offered, is even though I hadn't had an official internship, I still had so many experiences to talk to. And yeah, I think that similar to Angela, a lot of the events that UConn has to offer were really like what got me started in my various paths, especially the career fairs. I know that sometimes it's hard when, you have a busy schedule, you have lots of classwork to do, to take the time and go and talk to people for an hour and a half, but it's really worth the effort. So for TJX specifically, I had no idea that this like conglomerate company actually existed before I went and talked to the recruiter during the career fair at UConn. And I really just took the time to learn more about what merchandising meant and how exactly the internship program was. And just being very engaged and excited to be talking to the recruiter that was there. And then also, as I talked to different companies that day, I remember writing down, like as I went from one to the next, a question or a topic of discussion that we talked about during our conversation, as well as getting, of course, their business card, their contact information to reach out to afterwards. And then when I did reach out to the TJX recruiter afterwards, I specifically put in my note, like I really enjoyed, and then included the exact like conversation point or question that I found the most interesting of us talking about, so that she could hopefully more easily identify me, knowing that, they see so many students in one day. So trying to like find some kind of identifying point for yourself among the masses in the conversations that you've had. And I think that one thing that I wish I did more of was actually take even more advantage of all the events that UConn has. They're constantly bringing in employers, and there's some employers that I didn't think I was interested in, but knowing where I am now, I would have never thought I would be in this role, and I actually love it. So you never know until you talk to people and you do that with networking of what a job actually looks like and what it actually entails. So I wish I did even more of that to kind of have a better understanding of what was out there before I, graduated and went into my first role.
That's great. So, so many students, when they come to see us, they want to write a thank you note to somebody that they met at a career fair or an event. And Emma's point really is important, especially if you're at a career fair and you're talking to 10 different people at 10 different companies. Take a minute when you step away and just write a note, because you're never going to remember everything that was said. And that is the most powerful thing, as Emma said, because then the recruiter will connect the dots and remember, oh, I had that conversation. And more importantly, they're going to take note of the fact that you listened and that you digested what they said about the company, as opposed to the traditional thank you note, which doesn't really stand out because they're not remembering you as a student. So that was a great point, Emma. So I'm going to combine two questions together because I want to leave time for the students who have joined us to ask questions. So tell us a little bit about, Angela, the first things you learned in the world of work. What was hard to adapt to? What did you find unusual? And was your first job your dream job, or did you have to adjust as you went along? So anything that you noticed about the work world and when you first started?
Yeah, I think one thing that can be difficult shifting from going from a student to now an employee is getting away from a very academic focused mindset. Like you're used to, you do an assignment, you get a grade. This is like, it's very structured. And some workplaces are like that and some are not, depending on where you are, I think. And workplaces, I say that from both an intern and a full-time employee perspective, depending on kind of the type of manager or team structure that you're on. So for me, I guess I'll talk about my first job when I was at Mercer. I worked in the Boston office, but I reported to a team that was really kind of spread throughout the East Coast, and my manager was in a different office completely. So not having someone that I reported to directly in my office as a brand new employee was a little bit of a challenge to get used to. And then I think about it now, kind of almost 4 years later and working remotely. I've never actually met a member of my team. So, getting used to that, in the beginning, where if you have a question, you can just go ask your professor, or you can pop into the career office at UConn because you want to answer something. Now you're suddenly working, I need to set up a call with my manager. I need to ping them on Teams. I need to work in a different way that I wasn't used to doing before. You probably are all used to that now as students, just having, been a student during the pandemic. So it's a little different. But I will say, getting away from that mindset of like, I do something, I get a grade, this is what happens, to now I have a project. The steps may not be so clear for me. So what can I do first to maybe get to a milestone, or what are those milestones going to be, like defining those? Those are all things that you have to do. And I think any job you're going to be in, and getting just to shift your thinking a little bit, it can be difficult in the beginning. So I would say that. And then to the second part of the question around, was it my dream job? I think at the time, coming out of college, being a benefits consultant at Mercer was exactly my dream job. I was hired into the total health management practice. So it dealt a lot with like population health and a lot of these different vendors that target employers as part of their benefits program. But I did that for 2 years, and I had like a wide book of clients and realized that I really didn't want to do that piece anymore. And I wanted to learn about a different aspect of healthcare. So for me now, I'm working with health plans rather than employers, but I'm working with plans that support national account employer customers. So I'm using that information I had before to better serve my new quote clients in a different way, but also keeping pulse with all the innovation going on. So I think, I go through different phases. I, at this point, have done like 5 different things within healthcare, but never in a healthcare system. So, endless amount of possibilities here. But does that answer the question?
No, that's great.
Okay.
And Angela, while Emma's answering it, would you mind putting your email in the chat bar if you feel comfortable, so that if
Sure.
the students want to catch up with you? Emma, tell us a little bit about what you first learned in the work world, and was your first job your dream job? And
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, number one thing that I learned was working every day is hard, and working 9 to 5 every day, and even longer some days, is really hard. And it's a lot to adjust to, especially coming out of college. But what's good is that everyone's going through it at the same time. So just knowing that like eventually you will adjust to it and will get easier. It will happen. And I think that in with that theme of like you're working every day and you're at an office from 9 to 5 or whatever your hours are, how to make that time the most impactful and resourceful, especially as an intern. You usually get intern projects at an internship, or like you're shadowing someone a lot, all these different things, but you might not always have like a heavy workload or like direct assigned projects to you. So it's all about showing that you're engaged, showing that you're excited to be there. And in those moments that you might have downtime, like not just sitting there waiting to go home, but thinking like, how can I take what I've been given and be innovative here? Like, how can I show that I'm enjoying being here and that I want to be here more? So really just taking those downtime moments you have to try to be creative and try to just show that you're being thoughtful, and then saying that to your manager, whoever's in charge of you. Don't be scared to share your ideas. You may feel, I'm too young, I'm too new, I don't know enough to say anything, but they just want to see that you're trying and that you're, pushing yourself to be more thoughtful and innovative. So that's what I would just try to take advantage of, those smaller moments of downtime, whether you're in office or doing a remote internship. And then, was it my dream job? I wouldn't say so. I got my job at Nielsen IQ, which was a great first job. It's a great company to work for. Definitely recommend. But I didn't really know that much about. I was an analyst, and I didn't know that much about consumer goods data, which is what I was working for before I started. So it was a huge learning curve for me. And at first, it was a bit scary and intimidating, but the longer I was there, the longer I grew, it made me realize that I wanted to kind of be on the other side of the data, actually building the strategy, which is where I am now as an associate brand manager. I kind of get to do more of the longer term. Okay, this is how we're going to grow our brand, and this is how we're going to make people think of our brand. So having that first job, I wouldn't have been able to get to where I am without it. So it's all about stepping stones.
That is such a great point. And, it's interesting because both of you, Angela and Emma, started somewhere in a field that you wanted to be in, and realized when you were in there, like, no, that's not exactly where I want to be. But you don't ever know until you try, and I know a lot of students want to go to exactly the right job in the right company. And as you both said, you don't even know until you literally sit in the seat. And as I said yesterday on a virtual Career Tuesday, just start anywhere. When you're with a good company, you're going to end up in a good place for yourself. So just start anywhere and start absorbing the culture and learning. So thank you for your insights. And now I want to open it up to the students who have joined us, and feel free to raise your hand, ask a question on video, whatever feels good. And I hope that this has been helpful to you, as far as some simple things that you can do. Anyway, anybody got a question? Yes, Richmond, yes.
Everybody, first of all, thank you again for having us join tonight. We're really excited to be here. And I know a couple of my members already have some questions lined up, but mine is about, and this can be for everyone on the panel, or whomever wants to take it first, but once you do have an internship lined up, what is it that you can do to best prepare for it? Whether it be like reaching out to the company. I'm not sure how far in advance that's appropriate, but I'm just curious to hear about the different steps you could take to prepare yourself for the role even further before it starts.
Great question. Do either of you want to answer that?
Sure.
You wanna go first, Emma?
Yeah, I'll go first. So one piece of advice I would give is on just doing your own background research of the company, looking up the specific role, whether that be on a site, even like Glassdoor, to see what like people write about it, what kind of actions people are doing. And then as you get closer to the actual day, you might be given your manager in advance. So I'd always say reaching out to them, trying to set up a touch base call. They might even offer you the opportunity to talk to someone that isn't a, and I wouldn't be afraid to ask that either, just to kind of get your bearings a little bit. But contact to reach out to, whether that be the recruiter or actually who's going to be in charge of you, taking advantage of that.
Thank you. And actually a follow-up for Angela too. So for me, the position is actually health benefits consulting.
Great.
So I'm wondering if there's anything specific about it too that I should know about at this point.
Yeah, I would say I probably did not do any kind of specific prep for that kind of internship at that point. But I think it's helpful just to, read what's happening in the news, especially now. Healthcare is changing so fast that, like, I've subscribed to so many different healthcare newsletters. I can drop a few names in here actually if anyone's interested. But because things move so fast, and especially like having, just lived through a pandemic, and that accelerated things dramatically. And so understanding if it's benefits consulting for employers, understanding, maybe how some of these changes can impact the employer benefits landscape, having those insights going into that would be an incredible value add to your teams. I think, you may have like an interest in healthcare and some classes and not so far. Nobody's expecting you to know everything going into it. But if you've proactively done some of that research and you're in a conversation and you can say, oh, hey, I saw XYZ happen. Like, does that mean this for our client? Or I'm thinking about this strategy. I think that just goes a long way in showing people that you really care about being there.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And Richmond, I know we featured you on Instagram, so you can tell the group you have a benefits consulting internship this coming summer. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's correct. Thank you for that too. That was really nice.
We're always happy to feature students. Any other questions from anybody else, or? Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
First of all, thank you, Angela and Emma, for sharing your experiences. This was really helpful, especially as a senior who's trying to find a job and applying like every day. My question would be, let's say you see a job that you're really interested in, and it's like a big company, a big brands, and you apply and you don't hear from it, probably because there's a lot of people applying. So how can you sort of differentiate yourself as a candidate and what are some steps that you can take during that job process to prevent like never hearing, for example, or to get noticed?
Sure. Do either of you want to take that question?
Sure.
Okay, go for
I
it.
can go first again, Angela, if that's okay, or if you want to switch this time. I would just say, so I work at a very large company, Unilever, which owns so many brands, and there's thousands upon thousands of people that work there. So I would go back to what Mick was saying at the beginning of this call. If it really comes down to building your network and trying to find a way in using a referral. I found that like I got the role I'm in because I had a referral of someone that I knew and I used to work with. And again, I would go back to what Judy said of how you can narrow that search specifically on LinkedIn down to people that have gone to UConn. Just reaching out. People love to talk about themselves. People love to talk about their jobs. So I'm sure anyone would be happy to help, like a fellow person that went to the same college or high school, or anything you may have in common with someone, just reaching out and trying to build that network. And then I'm sure that would help like kind of get you a little bit of an edge into the interview process.
Absolutely. And Angela
Thank you so much.
also put in the chat bar, I think, some newsletters, right, that would tell you things about the field. So
I believe all of those are free. There definitely are other ones out there, but these three I think should be free. So great resources to go to.
okay, terrific. The other thing, Maya and all the students who are here, feel free to visit us as career counselors as many times as you want. I mean, this is a resource. We are your partners on this search, and either in person or virtual, feel free to make an appointment regarding, Maya, that's such a great point. And, but we will then drill down with you on, who have you reached out to, and how have you reached out, and in what manner, and how did you connect? And, there's nothing better, for example, than reading one of those newsletters and clipping an interesting article and sending it to somebody. That way they know that, that you're digging in and learning about the field and being proactive. So feel free. This is a commercial for the Business Career Center, but that's what we're here for, to help you on this journey. I want to be respectful of time. Is there any other question? Okay, Maya, you are so welcome. Any other questions at this point? If not, and reach out anytime. We're here for you. Emma, Angela, I can't thank you enough. We are inspired by your journey and by your journeys and your career. So thank you very much also for giving back to these students. And I know that, somebody probably opened a door for you or helped you to walk through that door. So we really appreciate your doing that for these students tonight and for us. So everybody have a good night. And if it's snowing near where you are, be careful driving. And we are going to sign off now. So thanks so much. Have a good night.
Thanks,
Thank
and a
you.
big shout out to the healthcare management.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, I stopped recording.